Blake, did you know that Bugs Bunny could speak Spanish?
I wish he would teach me. I can't even speak at all.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who just recently learned the English language, and I'm here with my co-host who actually speaks Spanish, Portuguese, and Mandarin, Toby Walters.
I'm wondering if I know any words in Portuguese or Mandarin. I do know some words in Spanish. I mean, I grew up outside of San Diego, so it's very common. You take Spanish growing up in school. You're around a lot of Hispanic people that speaking Spanish all around you. And of course, when you don't use it on a regular basis, you kind of lose it.
Yeah, I took Latin in high school, and the phrase was, the only thing I learned in Latin was how to cheat. Don't listen, Miss Burkhofer. I never cheated in your class.
So, we're making a nod to the Super Bowl. Blake, did you watch either halftime show?
We had the Super Bowl halftime show on. I don't know how to change channels that well on YouTube TV, and I was not going to risk losing my stream.
Yeah, there you go. And to be fair, I am so not with it on cultural context these days, like what's popular, what's not.
That's why we call you Grandpa Toby.
I know, exactly. So when somebody said, oh, Bad Bunny's going to be the artist at the Super Bowl, I was like, what? What's that?
You didn't know who Bad Bunny was at all?
No, not a clue.
This is not a bit. You just didn't know.
No, not a bit. And then come to realize he's number 1 or number 2 artist in the world?
Heresy. No one is above the Queen, Taylor Swift. Yeah, when I looked at the numbers, I was like, this is crazy.
And my kids totally knew who Bad Bunny was. They're not necessarily fans, but when I asked them, do you know who Bad Bunny is? They're thinking, of course. Why wouldn't we? So, did you pay attention during the halftime show? Did you partake of it? Did you have opinions on the execution of it? Or,
I mean,
were you not entertained?
Every halftime show, I'm just floored that they can get all this stuff out there and back as fast as they do.
Yeah.
Like, now that we talk to production people, I never appreciated that. I was just like, oh yeah, of course they do this so fast. Now every time, that's my biggest thought is, how on earth did you get this out there that fast?
Yeah. And I've never seen a set like that where it's like all these trees and shrubbery and then come to realize that the trees were all human beings. They just walked out onto the field and then took their position.
Oh, I assume they
Did you know that?
I thought they had grown all of that. Like,
yeah,
they
exactly.
put some miracle grow out
exactly, Blake. But no, they didn't even roll, because apparently you couldn't roll carts over the field because it's natural grass. So they only had certain things they were allowed to do. So the trees were human beings. They walked out and they just then took their position.
Don't you mean corn stalks? Wasn't it corn stalks?
Well, whatever. I think there were a lot of trees, maybe some corn stalks, whatever those things were.
Okay.
Yeah. But I was most impressed, honestly, with the choreography of the camera work. If you think about the way it followed, the camera operator is like a dancer, one of the dancers. That person has just as many choreographed moves as everybody else. So when you're watching at home, often you don't think about it. You're just having a great experience, which is just like production. When you don't notice it, then it's awesome. But
well, if you want to listen to an episode a year ago on this feed, so just scroll back.
Yeah.
We had someone who was a cameraman
Brandon
on the Super
Broussard.
Bowl.
Yeah.
And he got over 10,000 steps in that day. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, was it 20,000?
I'm sure it was way up there.
Also, do you think Bad Bunny actually sang any of that?
That is always the question. I was watching his mouth and I'm always wondering now, are they just lip syncing?
Yeah.
And it was, the mic was large enough and it was right in front of his mouth that I thought he might be, but he might not be. And there could have been moments where he's lip syncing, but then they also cut him in where he actually wants to say something live in the moment. I don't know. Overall, I thought it wasn't my thing because I'm not a Bad Bunny listener. I'm not a fan, but I was thinking, dude, this was really well done at least.
So you're not a little rabbit now?
I'm not I did grow up on Bugs Bunny. I do like Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny can talk.
Well, speaking of someone else that can talk and can speak rabbit and Portuguese, the original church tech and Sweetwater integration member, Aaron Ruse, is with us here today. Aaron, what did you think of the halftime show?
Oh gosh, it's super creative, really great. Again, not exactly a fan of Bad Bunny. Hadn't really followed him a whole lot, but the production value was phenomenal. Just amazing.
Yeah. Now, Blake,
great show.
I need to clarify how you grew up in Middle Tennessee. You've never left Middle Tennessee. Your context is so Middle Tennessean.
I don't know what you're talking about, Toby. I've always been in the South.
Do you believe that Puerto Ricans speak Portuguese?
Toby, I don't even know what I speak.
Puerto Ricans speak Spanish.
Ah.
People from Portugal speak Puerto Rican as well as Brazilians.
Dude, our friend Nathan Alves tried to explain this to me one time, and I was like, brain no worky.
I know.
I'm too old now. I don't take in any new information.
So Bad Bunny was singing in Spanish.
Okay, I do know that one.
Yes. Aaron, did you at least know that part?
Yeah, I did. I caught that much.
Do you speak any Spanish? Could you understand any of what it was?
No. I had to go back later and look at subtitles.
Well, we have three people that speak Spanish at Church Gear, and I was talking to two of them yesterday, and both of them said they couldn't really understand him either. They said he mumble raps and then he speaks. I mean, I guess it's the mumble rap, but they were like, yeah, we couldn't really understand him either.
I mean, can you even verify that Kendrick Lamar was speaking English the year before?
That's true. Most rap is pretty hard to understand. You feel it. You don't listen to it. You feel it.
Yeah. Aaron, what language do you rap in when you get into the spirit?
English. Solely English.
Yeah.
Aaron, as a tech person, do you ever get the main thing I thought about the Super Bowl halftime is this dude was dancing a lot. I get nervous for the mic. Like that's why I asked, was he actually using it? Because if that thing falls off, it's over. They're not going to run someone out there in the middle of this tight 15 minutes. How much glue or structure do you think goes into keeping that mic there?
I imagine there's a lot of tape.
Lots of tape.
And what's your guess? Was he lip syncing or was he singing?
I think he was actually singing or rapping live.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
And Blake, if you think about, you even get winded on this podcast and you're sitting down. And I remember reading that Taylor Swift rehearses on a treadmill.
That's how the Queen does it.
Yeah. Now, you think of any pop star that's running around dancing, all those choreography, you got to do the same thing. Like you are basically running your half marathon while singing and performing. I mean, could you even remember what your name was when you were running your half marathon, Blake?
Toby, the last 3 miles of the half marathon, I had to tell myself every motivational thing I've ever thought of, all of my childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had to tell myself every lie under the sun. No, I couldn't sing during that. I guess all artists are very aerobic professionals.
And Aaron, if you were going to be part of the Super Bowl halftime production, what would be your dream artist? Who would you want to work for?
Oh, dream artist. Oh, well, I think I go back to the history of halftime shows, and greatest of all time was Prince.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just phenomenal. So replicating that would be amazing, obviously, or just going back in time and being part of that production would have been phenomenal.
Yeah. You're going to have to resurrect Prince at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, right.
All right, Aaron. So,
whoa.
What? Oh,
the
my
best
gosh,
halftime show.
fine.
I want to get my take. The best halftime show is Eminem.
Yeah.
That was a couple of years ago.
With,
all those,
with
the whole squad. That was
pretty
amazing.
Good. Yeah. I mean, did you watch Prince? Do you remember Prince? Because he sang Purple Rain in the rain.
In the rain? Come on.
That's awesome. I don't know who Prince is.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh.
It's the artist, formerly known as Prince. Once again, known as Prince.
It trips me up that there's Queen and Prince. I'm like, are they related? How does this go together?
No, very different. All right, Aaron. So Blake's nonsense aside, you spent time at Willow Creek, Saddleback, front of house for Matt Redman. It's like you launched and founded church production somehow. You've worked in some of the coolest environments. Give us a little bit of your background. How'd you get into production? And then, what led to these roles that you've been able to be a part of?
That's a great question. I actually am a failed architecture student. So
Yes.
early on, I studied about 3 years of architecture and was challenged with a kind of reconciliation during an internship saying, well, you could do this, but if there's anything that you could see yourself doing outside of architecture, maybe look into that, because this is because of what all architecture involves and how rigorous it is. And I think I just had a really good mentor there. And at that time, I could see myself doing a myriad of other things, including being a guitarist for a rock band. So that kind of put me in a different perspective and down a different trajectory. From there, I actually was pursuing a like entertainment sort of thing as a guitarist in a band that was launched and it was gaining some traction. It started working somewhat reluctantly for a production company, like corporate AV sort of stuff. And that got me into this field. About 8 years into that, I realized that the rock star thing wasn't going to happen. So started looking for, well, what's next? What has really God brought into my life from a opportunity standpoint, and just because of the proximity of where I had studied in school. Our family was going to Willow Creek, and I was serving on the platform as well as in the production booth on a pretty consistent basis. So I walked into one of the production manager's office pretty humbly and said, "Hey, is there a place for somebody like me in the church staff?" And they gave me an opportunity to lead production for the kids ministry for the first couple of years at Willow. That progressed into being an audio director, and then several years after that, got called by the Lord to suffer out in Southern California at Saddleback. Actually took the role of audio director there for first few years before being asked to lead that team as their production director. I've always kind of had this tension with God, with feeling like he's blessed me with some talents and abilities, and I just want to be an artist or do the thing. But he keeps calling me into these positions that are leading people and allowing them to be developed and taking care of them. So that's kind of my story. As far as the Matt Redman thing, it was proximity. Matt was found himself out in Southern California with his family and was looking at I don't know if he was church shopping or if he was just finding places of community that resonated with his heart. And he was introduced to the Saddleback worship team. And he had actually engaged with a couple of my great friends who eventually got me on that same crew. So being part of that camp for the last 7 or 8 years has been a real blessing. I think that's that God provision sort of thing where he's calling me into these places of leadership and taking care of people first, but then also just sees my heart in wanting to express creativity and use some of the skills that I've been able to develop and the talent that he's given me personally. So I really view that as this place of respite where God just met me in that space. So
yeah, that's awesome. Blake, we've talked before about how you're banned from going to California, but you say you banned yourself because it's too far a flight. But honestly, you've never seen anything like the Saddleback campus. Their worship center, their whole campus. I describe it as Disneyland without the rides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is just absolutely gorgeous. And then on the sides of the worship center, they're fully glass walls, but they open up so you can have overflow outside on the sides of the worship center. It's unreal.
I need a visual of this. I can't even picture it. That's
wild. That's amazing.
Yeah. It constitutes for a pretty challenging space to work within with the light. And I think you have sunlight coming in directly onto the stage and glass walls everywhere. But man, it's a unique environment that is really inspiring to work within.
Yeah, you said a couple things, and correct me if you feel like I'm misrepresenting, but I feel like you said proximity and consistency led to opportunity.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah. I'll leave it there.
And so, we might have listeners thinking, well, I'd love to be front of house for Matt Redman or somebody of that ilk that I could be part of something really exciting. First of all, what's your proximity? What are you in proximity to? And then are you being faithful and consistent in what you're doing? And, you just eventually were in the right place at the right time. And people around you said, oh yeah, Aaron's great. He's consistent. He's reliable. He's faithful.
Yeah. I found that it has less to do with, you have to have a certain level of expertise, but it has less to do with that once you cross that threshold, and it's more about your character and your personnel, the relationship that you have with people and how you keep that. I think always being willing to say yes as well is a huge factor there. Even in seasons where I've felt like maybe my skill set has been underdeveloped and I need to really step it up, saying yes and saying, okay, I'm going to rise to that occasion and use that as an opportunity to take that next step into something that's new, because the reason I'm being asked is a blessing in and of itself. So let that be some reassurance as I'm taking those next steps. And that would be my advice to others as well.
Yeah, that's great. So you've seen a lot in production. You've been around two of the biggest, most influential churches in America. What do you feel like has changed over the last decade or two that is wildly different? And what is just kind of like, it's the same? It hasn't really developed much.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, some of the base AVL needs and broadcast stuff is basically the same. I think the nuance there, though, is the accessibility to equipment, the affordability of new technologies has lowered that bar and broadened the base of ministries and churches that can access those same type of things. You think back in the early 90s per se, only the largest mega churches are exploring LED walls and large scale production. And that's probably even limited on some scale to their conferences and their global summits and things like that. And now those same resources and type technologies are in a relatively modest local church. They're really accessible to those type of environments now. So I think that is maybe some differences there. I think steering away, a nuance to that would be steering away from the practical sets and physical set builds and things like that, and leaning more heavily into digital things like LED walls, video imagery, and lighting that is not fixed in nature. So like moving lights allows there to be a lot more dynamics and articulation from week to week versus a like season to season sort of move that was maybe more historic.
Yeah. I was thinking, even watching the Super Bowl this year, if you want to talk about one of the most recent contexts, audio, similar. He's wearing a mic, he's singing, he's got tracks. It's what it was 20, 30 years ago. Video was wildly different. You had choreographed camera operators on the field, like as part of the dance team almost. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I just didn't notice much lighting at all. Like that wasn't part of the design. Was that because it was kind of during the daytime in an outdoor season, or venue, or was that an intentional choice?
I have to think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're fighting sunlight, so you rather than try to fight against that, you embrace it and go with it. So then in that particular instance, it did lean back into practicals a lot more. So interesting context in that. It's all situational for sure.
Yeah. So even just thinking about audio in church is not that different than it was 20 years ago. Video in church is wildly different. Like, how have you seen, specifically, you're doing, installations at churches all over. What is everybody looking at the broadcast thing, or is it even transitioning to something new in the church space?
I think an emerging thing in technology on the visual side in the church would be utilizing lighting and video beyond the platform and pulling that into the congregation, allowing that to be more of an immersive environment. That's become a really emotive feature and tool that's used really effectively in the church these days. And that's really exciting.
Do you feel like the skill set has kept up as far as, I hear a lot of churches talking about, my pastor wants a big LED wall, and then we always want to make the caveat of you got to have somebody to create content for this giant LED wall. It's a very different type of technology. Do you feel like the skill set is advancing as well?
I think it's required that it does. That's a great point. I think when Saddleback first invested in their set of LED walls on stage proper in the center upstage wall, that was definitely one of those reconciliation processes. Like, oh my gosh, now we have this giant canvas and we have to utilize it effectively every moment of every service. So that did require some shifting in some of our staff, some of our volunteer tasks weekly to really envision some creative content that goes on that. Now, the technical side of things and the upkeep and the maintenance of, that's another area that needs to be reconciled as we're making those investments and looking at utilizing that long term and maintaining it well long term. They're definitely all correlated for sure.
Yeah. I'm thinking of trends pop up in everything, but in church production it's no different. Like, there are different trends that pop up at different times. I'm thinking of moving lights were all the rage a handful of years ago, and I constantly was hit in the face with them during worship and thinking, this is so annoying. What are some trends you're seeing now that maybe you're thinking, I'm really excited about the direction that we're going in production? And what are some things maybe you're thinking, I wish we could kind of get away with from this?
Oh man, I got a bunch of all these. I think first that comes to mind for me is on the architectural side, there's a shift away from the black box that has been become ubiquitous with the contemporary church in the U.S. here, at least, and a movement towards creating sacred spaces that are set apart from other clutter and noise in our daily life, reserved for some like a holy connection with our Creator, and that's expressed architecturally through just more thoughtful design. I think allowing there to be windows in places of worship and connection to the creation outside is a marked shift from where we maybe have been a decade or so ago. And so I see that taking root again. So it's kind of a calling back to the sacred more than it is the versatile canvas that nothing else can get into in the holy huddle. It's really connected to the greater picture of creation at large. So that's a huge one. I've also, from an architectural standpoint, I think larger lobbies and gathering spaces, more breakout rooms. So the idea being it's not just come and be entertained, but it's come and be refreshed and launch into a season of ministry or in this next week. So there's a lot of emphasis being put on outside of the service elements proper, the culture of a church, I think, is more holistic as we're moving into the future. So those are really exciting. They have maybe very little to do directly with AV, but production can support that well. So I guess along that line, allowing technologies to be receding into the background and doing how would we say this? Doing less better would be probably a theme. Yeah. So what I mean by that is, rather than wiggling every light because it can, let's make sure that we have exceptionally thoughtful and well thought out and executed key light and hair light, so that it just comes across effortless and without distraction. I think there has been a call to that in pretty much every area of technology, particularly for ministry. When you look at the growth patterns of churches and the fact that the Orthodox Church is growing in a somewhat disproportionate area beyond their trend, that shows that there's even like the Gen Z and younger seekers or believers are really gravitating to something that is not about a show at all. It's about a genuine connection. So embracing that in every aspect that we can with technology. Now, does that dictate exactly what the technologies are or how they're used? I think that's up for conversation.
Yeah. I love you talking about architecture. As a failed architect student, I'm sure that, both your interests coming together in one. That's fun.
Right. Yeah.
Talk to us about unique challenges. So I totally agree. I mean, I even just wrote a book called Sacred Spaces, Modern Production, where you know, there is this trend to go back into more sacred, more traditional, more windows and architectural elements and sacred worship elements. But then that can naturally fight, because we built production in black boxes. Black boxes are the perfect canvas for all the production. So now what are the unique challenges that we're now facing because we're putting church back into more sacred places?
Also, Toby's new nickname on this podcast is going to be Unique Challenge. He's
Unique Challenge.
Word.
Yeah, well, I think it maybe just more than anything right sizes where production rightfully should be in the church anyway, as a supportive resource. They're tools to be utilized, not to drive necessarily the culture or to drive the ministry, but to support it. So, and to enhance it. So, allowing if the environment, I'll take Saddleback for example, if the environment and the value culturally is we're going to stay connected with these giant glass walls on either side of the room, we're going to stay connected to creation and through that way, and we're going to exploit the beauty of the environment and the wonderful weather that we have by putting people seating outside. Well, then we're not going to lean into projection. For example, that necessitates that we're going to utilize LED screens, and we're not going to lean into a bunch of beam lights and flashy things because we already have a lot of light in the room. So how do we just enhance that and create something that is just a step above what the room already looks like? We're not going to try to fight against it. If you can't fix it, or if you can't fix it, you feature it, I guess would be the saying. So
that's why you're on
so
this podcast. You wondered, didn't you?
So the idea there was we can utilize some colorful light, and we can paint we maybe can't saturate all of the congregation in colored light during a Sunday morning service, but we can utilize a white ceiling as a canvas and provide color there to enhance the visuals instead. So it's a matter of getting out of the technical box and getting into the creative side of it and saying, what can we do with this space? Let's dream about that, rather than focusing in on the what we can't do because it's not a black box.
Yeah.
I really like this. Like, so production is not make a black box. Production is support the ministry. And that might be a black box. It might not.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely not a Puerto Rican box that speaks Portuguese.
Oh my God.
Well, there are Portuguese speaking churches out there, Toby, are there not?
Yes, but they're just not Puerto Rican.
Today on this podcast, Toby's decided to be less. He's decided to do less better. As you said earlier,
Yes.
He's doing less better over here.
Aaron, I want to talk specifically about audio in a sacred space. So oftentimes you're talking more traditional space, more traditional architecture, more difficulty mixing audio in that room. And then I'm a firm believer in the importance of room treatment. How do you treat a room when, like, you don't treat a room visually, you treat it digitally or with actual, physical elements. So how are you guys tackling these things? How should churches tackle these things in rooms that are terrible for modern worship? It's a messy situation.
Well, I think there's a delineation line there between adapting or utilizing a space that was clearly not created for that type of expression of worship and trying to round hole square peg it into submission.
Yeah.
That's different than collectively curating with an architect and a builder and the church team together, a space that has elements that support those new initiatives of being connected and has this reverence and holiness, but inherently does work towards the programming that you want to have in the space. So I guess the difference being taking over an old cathedral and trying to have a modern, loud, raucous sort of worship concert in it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's counterintuitive, and it's going to be an uphill battle the whole way. There's a TED Talk. There's a Talking Heads guy.
I know the Talking Heads.
Whatever his name is. Yeah. Shoot, I'll remember the name eventually, but
it'll come to you in a dream tonight.
Wake up the premise the premise of his talk was really fascinating to me because he was saying I've got a dog in the background here. What he was, David Byrne, that's his name.
Yeah.
Talking Heads. What he was saying was, the architecture influences the music, and as a musician, so that was his statement there. And what he went further to say or explain was these cathedrals and sacred spaces of old. There was music designed around the architecture of that space, and the instrumentation was designed around the architecture of that space, and it enhanced the music. The architecture enhanced the music, whereas a nightclub perfectly supports the program elements and the music of like a disco, where it's really tight and really clear, and all that articulation and the fast pace of the music can be recognized through the architecture. So I think, not to sidestep you completely with your question, but I think there is an inherent difference between trying to take over and do something that's just not appropriate for the room versus building a room that can visually have some aspects of openness and reverence and some heritage, but actually does have some modern features of a controlled acoustic space. Now, with that said, if I was in a place of leadership at a church who was maybe changing their trajectory of how they want to express worship on a weekend, and they're holding services in an old cathedral or a really loud, open acoustic space, I would challenge that, and I would say, well, let's explore the boundaries first of how far can we take that from a musical standpoint that still works well within the context of the room that we're meeting in. Let's go there first. Now, obviously, there's some really great technology that we can exploit to help take that next step and promote clarity in those environments, keeping audio on people and not bouncing across all the walls. So a lot of controlled beam sort of things would be very helpful in those applications. However, there's still physics involved, and it's still, I think, the most powerful choices that you can make are going to be around the programming elements, frankly.
Yeah. Well, the worship and creative side doesn't want to hear that, Aaron.
Yeah, right.
They want to hear it. Fix it in the mix. You make it better.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I think as somebody who works with a lot of different groups and different ministries, different churches, that's always I think the leading questions are, how do we best support your ministry? It's not so much about how do we get the best speakers in here. It's listening and learning about who they are, where they want to go, recognizing the limitations of the space that they're maybe in, or helping to dream about, the new space and what they'd like to leave behind from that old space that they're meeting in, and what they want to take with them, and then mashing that all up and making sure that they're in that we're singularly working towards an end goal that is really going to be conducive for their ministry for the years to come.
Do you think it's easier to add modern elements to a traditional room or add traditional elements to a modern black box?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I think I would say that the traditional elements to the black box, there are methods, just particularly given the palette that maybe we're presuming that there's a palette of digital displays and media. There's a great sound system with some great ability to reproduce spaces. I think it's easier to go that direction than the other. Now that it's all continuum though, right? So the far extremes on either side are probably pretty prohibitive to get into the expression of the other. But that continuum in the middle, I think I would lean probably towards saying, well, we can always add the immersive audio kind of thing in Constellation and all that. Now, budgets aside, there's some really compelling and interesting opportunities there that allow you to really dynamically choose and transport almost the churchgoer or the congregation member into an acoustic space that feels really appropriate given the program that's happening. That's harder to do, inherently those sort of things have to start from a controlled place, and then you can always make them bigger. You can't really make them smaller.
Yeah. Keeping on the idea of budget constraints in reality. And if we're talking at, a church that seats 100 people, you're talking one set of budget constraints, but you've also been at Willow Creek that sits almost 7,000. Have you found, or do you have any opinion on where there's a spot where once you get over this amount of seats with a mega church, the price just exponentially increases on everything? I know, a place like Willow has to change out house lights, and it's 100 times more expensive than a smaller church.
Yeah, I guess in my experiences, it's interesting that I think there is a rather linear progression, like a per seat investment that's required, with a caveat being that there is certainly a marked bump at the time of inserting broadcast ministry or IMAG, those type of things. That becomes a bump. And then it kind of resumes into this linear sort of trajectory per seat. you add a zero to how many people are in the room, and you add a zero to to the production needs that support it.
Yeah.
That may be, I don't know, that might be limited in my personal experiences, but I have found that to be true in the different various seats that I've sat in over the years. I would say that like anywhere between that, what is the metric per seat? An appropriate expectation for spending would be $750 to $1,500 per seat on AVL in a new church build. So, and that doesn't necessarily, that metric doesn't completely shift based on like room size. Now, what I will say is I think we have learned from decades past with the explosion of the mega church kind of movement and popularity of that, there is a scale and size that just ends up not being helpful long term. There's so much pressure on maintaining an order of magnitude that justifies the room that it becomes prohibitive long term. I mean, certainly not bashing large rooms, and I came from a few really large ones. I think Willow was 7,000 people, but that becomes almost a liability for the ministry long term at that point. It's a very dedicated space that can only be used one specific way, and to actually maximize what it is, you need to fill that, and that's crazy. So I think an appropriate shift that I've seen happen is the trend moving away from, well, let's overbuild one room into the maximum size that we think we'd ever need. Which is saying more realistically, well, I think a congregation size of no more than 1,000 to 1,500 person at a time allows there to be a reasonable level of community development and connection that's made there. And if our ministry grows beyond that, we'll look at replicating rather than expanding.
Yeah. I do love that trend in the church that I feel like a lot of churches figure that out the hard way, but I do like the, replicating rather than expanding. Let's shrink back down go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, I think Rick Warren once was talking about this, and he made coming from a guy who's leading a really large church, and he's like, well, the huge congregations only benefit the egos of the pastors and the staff that work at the church. They have nothing, there's no benefit to the congregation member to be part of a mega church. Yeah. So it's all a liability except for our own egos. So let's be real about that.
Dang.
You like that one, Blake?
That's a good hot take.
Yeah, from a mega pastor.
I don't want to get us in trouble. It's just I also am a huge fan of the replication. I think, as you say, church, so much about church is community. It's about launching people into ministry that week, which you said earlier. You do that better. It's tough. I'm not saying you can't do it in a mega church. It's harder. It is a higher level of difficulty. Just last night in the youth room, I do youth on Wednesday nights, we had these black curtains on the right and left side. And to cut out the right and left, it was just the middle, because it's the youth. It's not the amount of people on a Sunday. And one of my boys goes, "What's up with the curtains? Because they just look so weird." Well, that's because we needed to shrink the room down. Yeah. But we just had these not all the way stretching, weird, janky looking curtains.
Oh,
and so
sure.
I was feeling being in an now that's the youth, so it's fine. But I felt the weirdness of the room, as you say, just last night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing for sure.
So let's shrink our context back down. Let's use these curtains, and let's go back to most churches are going to be more like 200 seats in a room. And so let's say, church plant, they're moving out of their school auditorium. They got a building. They're going to retrofit a 200 seat auditorium. They're going to come with a budget of some sort of reasonable budget. And what are kind of the markers that you would say, all right, you want to start with this percentage on audio, this percentage video, this percentage lighting, or where do you start? Infrastructure, room treatment? What's kind of the breakdown that you guys often work with?
Yeah. Well, again, listen and learn first and understand who we're working with and what their goals are. But beyond that, the first fruit, I think, it's often protecting from unnecessary expenses long term. So infrastructure, which is like the cheapest investment you can make early on, making sure that there's conduit paths and there's the appropriate patch points and things like that. Now you can overdo that. I had this opportunity to work at and be part of two very different ministries, Willow and Saddleback. Willow, I think, would admit that they overspent by $1 million some dollars in infrastructure that never got used when they built their big thing. But in contrast, found myself schlepping feeder cable over ductwork because there's no catwalks. There's nothing at Saddleback because there's no pre-planning or advanced planning for the future there. So like you take that 80-20 rule and you say, okay, well, what's actually likely to be used in the future? Not just all the what ifs, but like what actually is a prudent investment. Put some money there. Beyond that, I think acoustics and audio system would be first fruits in a 200-person room. It's very unlikely that IMAG is going to be appropriate or needed in any level at all ever. Yeah. So like don't get like hung up in this perception that, well, I have to have cameras and I have to have lights and I have to have all this. Like let's focus on things that are actually going to be helpful to supporting your ministry uniquely in that smaller scale and space, which is heavily loaded towards audio. I would say in that size room, isolation of the drum kit or like figuring out some accommodation to not make that room dominated by a loud drum kit. I've not met many people who have walked away from the church or a particular congregation because it was too quiet. I have met others. To the contrary, I think we tend to, as production people, say, well, it has to be in a certain way. The reality is, particularly like when I'm mixing, I've been challenged to say, well, how quiet can I make it and still make it connect? So with that mindset, keeping things isolated and I guess expanding the isolation theme to separation between spaces as well. Can that ministry, can a Sunday morning worship service happen while right adjacent to them, kids ministry is having programming as well? Yeah. Are those two, because we're in a small environment and things are what they are, let's make sure that those two spaces can autonomously work well, or let's reconcile that somehow alternatively. I think keeping things as simple as possible, straightforward as possible, not putting a bunch of intermediary technology in the middle with preset panels and things like that. Just keep systems as inherently simple as possible. So like self-monitoring rigs and things like that really are helpful to facilitate clean, like less emphasis on production and more emphasis on like worshiping together.
Mm-hmm. Y'all breaking up the churches not having stuff completed. We don't often quote the Bible on this podcast, but Luke 14:28, for which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That just feels applicable.
Yeah.
It would be quite the disaster to end a project that way. Aaron, could you give us a disaster moment, something where everything went wrong in production and how you addressed it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as is likely the case with most people in production, we do everything we possibly can to avoid catastrophe during an event or during a service. So most of my stories, frankly, do revolve around things that we'd learned and rectified ahead of time. However, there was one opportunity of learning. It's maybe a different way of phrasing it. It was definitely a failure point, though, where we had just installed the new PA at Saddleback, and maybe some of the bugs hadn't been fully worked out yet. And I think one of the first usages of the new PA was during one of their conferences midweek. So it was a big like national conference, a lot of pressure. I think we had a guest artist on stage. So the countdown is happening to the first session of this conference. And the PA went dead at like T-2. Like there was no audio coming out at all. And it was one of those like sheer panic moments because we're not fully under our sea legs yet with the new system and all. But thankfully we had thought through a lot of backup plans and whatnot. So we did have a backup analog pathway to get to the PA and to drive sound to the system. And it took about 30 seconds, and we had to re-rack that countdown timer and start over, and it was super awkward. So like afterwards, the relational cleanup that you have to do and the ownership that you have to take of that is always challenging. But I think that is honestly, that's where we're called to do our best work as production people. It's through that the relational equity that we've developed ahead of time, so that we can have that really very clear, honest conversation with our pastoral leaders. And I think that the charge in those moments is to not scapegoat, to take ownership of accurately what we need to own there, but also to educate so they understand how it did happen. This isn't scapegoating; it is just honestly giving them some insight so they have some assurance of what went wrong and how it won't happen again. That was, anytime that I've approached a issue like that, I'm so thankful that we've spent time in the trenches together ahead of time, working and planning and growing a relationship and a trust, so that when those things happen, they know that this wasn't for lack of care or lack of planning. It was truly something that was outside of our ability to avoid. But but we can plan for how to correct it in the future. Everything is always a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
Lots of relational cleanup, Toby. That's just another podcast for me and Toby. That's going to be the takeaway I'm going to take away from today's episode is you got to do relational cleanup, which I'll schedule right after this. But would you give us a tech takeaway in addition to that? What's something that you would give as your unique piece of advice to everybody, just to make their Sundays better, keep them running?
I would say this is probably not super groundbreaking, but keeping things as simple as you can. Pull the Waves plugins off and get back to just the sound source first. I think that's maybe just a broader paintbrush or a metaphor for production in general. Keep it really simple. Keep to the point. I think I was listening to the Facebook scroll feeds and all that. And there's a guy, Austin Anderson, he wrote a song called Normal Church. Have you guys heard this? It's so good. Yeah. So basically it's just it's just saying, this is what has become the common expression of ministry in the US, chasing after these really high bar of production when they don't really have the facility to do so well. So like, can we just scale that down to something that is actually authentically who we are? Maybe it's not a technical takeoff, but I would say if I can encourage people who are listening to be honest about where they're at and where their congregation's at, not use technology as a crutch to fill in gaps that exist chronically. If it's a gap that exists one week, great. If it's a chronic thing, then you're chasing after something that maybe isn't you. So let's get back to being authentic in our expression of worship.
I think that's a great takeaway.
I agree.
And, if you're trying to chase some sacred spaces with modern production, get Toby's book. I think he covers that topic he just mentioned.
Yeah,
Aaron, is
sure.
there anything you would like to plug? I just plugged Toby's book. Anything you would like to point people towards?
Well, I have been able to be part of this group at Sweetwater Integration for a couple of years. And I think the trajectory there, the history being what it is, and the affiliation with Sweetwater, just knowing that they are a group. Sweetwater has always been a group that is relationship led and caring for people long term is the goal. And Sweetwater Integration just really being a bolt-on division of that with really embodies that same mindset and that same ethos. We are church people. Everybody that works on church projects and ministry projects at Sweetwater Integration are entrenched in our own ministries and our own churches, enthusiastic about taking ground for the kingdom from that platform. So, just if there's anybody who wants to learn more about it, we've got a website and all that, and we can go from there.
Love that. Well, thank you, Aaron, for joining us, man. This was a really fun episode.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
All right, Blake. So I used to eat meals with the Sweetwater catalog open in front of me, just dreaming of the gear I could never afford.
It make the food taste sweeter.
Exactly. So when you were, eating meals or stuffing your face with hot dogs and corn chips growing up, what did you have open in front of you? What did you like to dream about?
Well, there's this thing called Playboy. Just kidding. My uncle did bring a bunch of those when he was dying.
Wow.
And he brought them to my parents' house when I was like 18. They got thrown away. I don't know if we should cut that or not, but
let's find out.
I would read.
If we didn't, you should definitely share this episode.
And you should say, this is a good episode for what to consume and what not to consume at your church.